So whether you're a big sports fan or not, I'm really excited about this session because I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff for us to talk about here in regards to sports and performance and mindfulness. And as you may know, to use a sports metaphor, I'm pinch hitting for Congressman Tim Ryan, who was supposed to be here. He'll be here later, but he got stuck in Washington doing something important and he couldn't make it here this morning. But as a former baseball player myself, I'm honored to be up here with George and with Mike to talk about this. And I think I want to start, George, with you because, so as was introduced, George, you've had a chance, really a pioneer in this world, working with the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan and working with Kobe Bryant and the Lakers and now working with the New York Knicks. Talk a little bit about what was that like when you first started working with athletes in this regard a number of years ago?
Can you hear me? I feel like I'm coming out of the shadows. I feel like I've been doing this clandestine process for a number of years, and now it's okay for me to come out and share what I've been doing. So it's interesting because when I first started, obviously, I was working for the Center for Mindfulness at the time, and John Kabat-Zinn knew Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson wanted somebody to come in and teach the team how to deal with the stress of success because they had already won 3 championships in a row. And so I had no idea what I was doing. Pretty much I allowed the mindfulness to inform me how to proceed. Because I'm saying, okay, I'm going in, I'm going to work with people who just won 3 NBA championships in a row, which hasn't been done since 1968 when the Celtics did it. So what am I going to say to them? How am I going to present mindfulness to them? And basically, I just went in there and let the mindfulness inform how I needed to relate to them and how, so I had to become the mindful athlete, if you will.
Yeah.
And give them away. Of course, it helped because in college, Dr. J was my roommate. So
was he really?
Yes.
Oh.
So I've been around greatness for quite a while. He was Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan because in college he couldn't even go around the campus. He was such a celebrity. So
really?
I feel like all the things were coming together. Of course, I played sports and I got injured and I wasn't able to compete in college. So I had an experience that allowed me to communicate with them because I had been an athlete. I had been around professionals before, so it just kind of worked out.
And it worked out pretty well because the Bulls won 3 more championships, and then the Lakers won 3 championships. So I'd say good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Mike, so you've been a peak performance expert and a sports psychologist for many years and working with lots of different athletes, and in most recent years you've gotten a lot of attention because you work with Pete Carroll in the Seattle Seahawks. Although some of us here in San Francisco aren't huge Seahawks fans, but appreciate what you guys are doing. So what's been your experience? How do you access some of this self-mastery, as we were talking about before we came on stage, with athletes? What gets to them that they pay attention?
Pain.
Pain. Yeah.
I think that what I've come to understand is that pain is where people pay attention. And it's a mistake for us, I believe, or me, I'll speak of me, to help alleviate people's pain. But to actually understand it and to follow that, to be able to have some sort of insight about where do we go next. And what are the tools that we can generate from that pain to be able to be more present in other moments where it requires us to be present. So I've spent my time in very rugged environments.
Yeah.
And it's the rugged environments that allow us to test how well that we're able to stand in the middle of chaos. So,
yeah. Well, in addition to the Seahawks, you were telling me that you worked in all kinds of extreme sports and other places. So what are some of the techniques that athletes are able to utilize in the work you do with them that make a difference?
Well, so my training is in traditional sports psychology. Mindfulness is an approach to life. It's an approach to be able to understand, have some insight and be able to have some awareness about how we're being in this moment. And outside of that, some of the techniques that we would use, certainly breathing training, right? And that certainly can be called meditation. It can have lots of different ways to, deliver the idea of what it is. Awareness of self-talk, being able to see and experience and feel performance prior to actually being there, which is imagery. So there's lots of mental skills that we apply, but I think the center is understanding the athlete. It's the relationship first, and understanding who this person is and where they want to go, who they're becoming.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of it. Meeting people where they are. In sport, we have the opportunity to meet them where they sweat.
Yeah.
And wherever their passion, another person's passion is, if you can meet them in that passion, it's a whole different understanding. Like, it's an accelerated rate for conversations about growth.
Yeah. Well, and George, you mentioned about coming out of the shadows, and I mean, obviously, just this conference here. And first of all, how cool is a place like Wisdom 2.0, where a session with Byron Katie can be followed on sports psychology, and we're all in the same room? Very cool. But have you seen things change? Like, are the athletes different? You're working with the New York Knicks now. Is that different than the Chicago Bulls in the 1990s?
Yes, it's very different. I think if I were to go back to comparing Dr. J to Michael Jordan, to Kobe Bryant, to maybe LeBron James or some of the athletes now,
yeah,
I think because of the environment, the cultural or the context in which they grow up,
yep,
can determine how much they are going inside and expressing themselves,
yes,
in terms of understanding there's resources within.
Yeah.
Like Mike was saying, I find that a lot of it, like, say, for instance, we talk about poise all the time.
Yeah, poise?
Yeah, and John Wooden used to say, poise is just being yourself. And so what I feel like I'm doing is I'm really trying to help the person be a person first before they're an athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the trap that we fall into in sports, is that at a young age, and I think many of us can identify, at a young age, people identify with being, I am an athlete.
Right.
Yes.
And then every time they go on the field, their entire identity is at risk if they say that statement, I am an athlete. And how do we define ourselves as a person first is a completely different experience if you can reverse and decouple I'm an athlete from I'm a person.
Yeah.
And that's the work that, that's transformational work to just kind of drop that piece.
And in your experience, Michael, are they open to that? Does that resonate with them?
I mean, we're all on a journey at some point in life, and some people are, and some people aren't. And insight work. Maybe this room thinks that insight work is for everybody, but the truth is not everybody wants it right now. Some people want a bigger car and a bigger watch and a bigger house, and they're looking for achievement and observable achievement.
Right.
And so it's understanding where they are and being able to meet them there with grace and poise and acceptance.
So meeting them where they're at. And I think, George, a lot of times, and I know that your work with the Phil Jackson's teams, Phil Jackson's the coach of the Bulls and the Lakers and now works with the Knicks, and he got made fun of as the Zen master, and people would laugh, but with all this success. But the way it got portrayed, at least in the media, the way it sounded was like you'd go to practice and you'd get Michael Jordan and everybody laying on the court and they're all meditating there. But I'm curious, what were you actually doing with them, or what do you do specifically?
Yes, well, mental training is a big part of it, being able to be still and know.
Okay.
So sometimes that could take the form of lying on the floor and just being aware of your body and that sort of thing. Getting whether it's a body scan or just being there and just breathing and then being.
Gotcha.
And just getting intimate with what your body feels like and just being able to be embodied, or I like to talk about being in your body. So you're moving from the inside out.
Yes. So
you actually know you have a body.
Yep.
And most of the time it takes the form of an action. Like moving. So can you be still and know in the midst of activity? And so that's it. So if it's like a moving center, I like to refer to it like the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
There's all this turmoil, but then there's this peace, this ease, this stillness is a place from which we can operate out of that.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're training to do, is can we be more present to what is happening as it is happening without identification with I am doing this.
Yeah.
But actually it's being done.
That's cool.
If that makes any sense. So it's like you do all this training and then you talk to people about their peak performance, they will mention something like, okay, so time is altered, right?
Right.
And when they say is, there was a gentleman that scored 52 points in the game, and when they asked him what it was like, he said, it felt like I was just in the gym with my shooting coach, and we were just shooting. Well, it was shooting. In other words,
Right.
everything disappeared. Even himself, the sense of self is kind of not there.
Something takes over.
Yeah, it's things are happening.
Yeah.
It's happening, if that makes any sense. Makes sense. It's just a being. And it's what Michael was talking about. It's not about I am an athlete or I'm doing this and I'm playing great. It's more like I'm just being with what is and flowing with things as they are.
Right.
Not trying to make them go away or not trying to bring anything into existence, but just this relaxed receptivity of just allowing, like you train the body, then you let the body do what it does.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Well, and Mike, I know that you and Pete Carroll, who's the coach of the Seattle Seahawks, there's the work you've done with the Seahawks, but the two of you started a company together and you're now working with businesses as well. And since a lot of people in this room don't necessarily operate in the sports world, what's some of the things you've been learning, you and Pete have been creating together and you've been learning that's relevant to larger culture that comes from that work that might be relevant to a lot of people here in the room?
I think there's two things to pay attention to. One is the environment that people are working, the culture, the way that the connectivity takes place is foundational. It's important. And the second is that the individual skills within the people trying to do something, trying to achieve some sort of metric, whether it's a revenue stream or creating a better widget or solving world problems, whatever that activity is, that it's human capital that is at the center. And we're in a time right now that is unprecedented. We're in an off-terrain experience in life where we're running a mile a minute, and it's unbelievable what's happening for us.
Yes.
At this current juncture, we have to gate out so much information. There's so much noise to be able to find a true signal, right? The one or two pieces of information that allow us to really go in a direction is an important skill. And the relationship between people is foundational. So how do we do that? Living presently is a way that we can access another human. It's a way that we can actually be in a deeper relationship.
Yeah.
And it's also what allows us to access our craft.
Yeah.
Whatever the craft might be, whether it's creativity or it's crunching numbers or it's having a vision or it's shooting a basketball, whatever that craft is. And, so that it's culture and individual skills and, following the vision of the CEOs of what they're wanting to create.
Yeah. Well, and we're just about out of time here with this session. We're going to be doing a breakout session right after this where you guys can come and ask questions of both of these amazing men. And I want to ask if you have any final thoughts, but one thing I just want to say, I think, to all of us and why this is relevant, even if, again, you're not in the sports world or even a sports fan, is that people in our culture pay attention to sports and know that sports, even more so than business, is so focused on performance and on outcome and on winning. And knowing that this work is happening and has been happening for a while and is now coming out of the shadows and happening more with some very, very successful, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl last year and almost won another one this year, right? We can use that in our conversations as evidence for why it's important and people pay attention. And I think that that's relevant.
Yeah, I mean, it's an outcome-based world that both George and I are in.
Yeah.
And so it makes it relevant in a way that there's a storyline right underneath, which is that in sports you have to get the outcome, right?
Yes.
For coaches to stay around, for athletes to have contracts, for livelihood, like that has to happen. But the second thing is that's often missed is the attention to detail towards mastery.
Yeah.
And that really is an involvement in the process, a deep engagement in the process. And that part of the storyline, like it's a wonderful celebration that we can see. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Mike. Anything
Yeah.
final you want to say, George,
Yes.
before we wrap up here?
The interesting thing is, because I do executive coaching and I work with corporations, and I worked in a corporation as a financial analyst for 16 years. And the interesting thing is, it's a lot safer to talk about stuff like when I work with executives, to talk about it in the sports metaphor.
Yes.
You know, like say, well, okay, what did Phil do to get his team on the same page?
Right.
Or how do you get people to commit to excellence?
Yes.
Is that something you do? And I kind of look at it like myself, and I feel like we're all like mindful athletes,
Yeah.
if you will, and that the game we're playing is a game of life.
Yeah.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yeah.
And each day, each moment, we're challenged with how are we going to relate to things as they are
Yeah.
in a moment without forgetting who we are, basic goodness, if you want to call it that, or divinity or whatever. But there's a way of relating to ourselves and experience, but it has more to do with being. So I talk about being mindful, but it's being presence of mind, but it's also knowing the essentials to pay attention to.
Yeah. That's great.
Okay.
That's great. Well, let's give a round of applause for both of these. Wonderful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.